and warm welcome to everyone, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or even good night here. So it's really a pleasure to have you all in this meeting. We will make a readout of the ICANN85 meeting in Mumbai, and with two questions for tonight. It's what are the main takeaways that you have, and what is the top priority for the coming months. And we will do that is in a round table format. We will first with different constituencies of ICANN. We will start with Philippe Fouquart from GNSO, and afterwards many other speakers, and the floor will be also yours, all the attendees. Philippe Fouquart, the floor is yours. Welcome, good evening.
Good evening to you, Frédéric. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Philippe Fouquart, I work for Orange. I'm the ISPCP chair, which is one of the constituencies of the GNSO. ICANN in Mumbai was a very efficient meeting for a lot of people. And before I start with my takeaways, I should say that it was probably one of the most well-organized meetings I've attended, thanks to Nixie, which is an ISP. So I'm probably biased in that respect, but I thought that was a very, very efficient and effective meeting. My takeaways, and again, I'm partial, 4 or 5 items. I can't not mention DNS abuse because that was the first meeting of the policy development process, which was well attended. There were lots of expectations on this from all across the community. There were concerns about the timeline, which is arguably quite long, but there's always so much we can do with the policy development. I think there were encouraging elements around the initial discussions, since there were proposals of contract language amendments that people put forward in order to accelerate the process. So I thought that was very encouraging. There were many inputs from various constituencies from the community, which I'm sure people will mention. That there's lots of expectations on this because it gets to a point where the sheer degree and the cleverness, I should say, of those abuse scenarios makes the action from ICANN all the more necessary within the remit to use that ICANN. So that was the first one. A quick word about New Round, because I think it has to be quick. We're getting to launch day, late April. You could tell during the meeting in Mumbai that people, those who would know they would apply, knew that already, and those who wouldn't knew that as well. I think the decisions have been made late last year for most of the potential applicants. But there was all-around presentation of the program and what people should expect within the next few months. Review of reviews was an important topic. It's an appalling term, let it be said, which is the term that I can use to review the process that are embedded in bylaws for the community to be accountable, not only to themselves, but also to the outside world. And there have been a number of presentations of the various work streams, they call that buckets, of that review of reviews. The rationale for this is that it got to a point where the cadence of the reviews mandated by the bylaws could not be sustained by the community. So it really led to overload by the participants to those reviews. I'll focus on one work stream in particular, which is of interest to ISPs, which is called the structural review, because we think that's something that is longer weighted and necessary moving forward to make sure that our structure is relevant and reflective of the internet as a whole. And we haven't done this for 25 years. So I think that's something we should do, making sure that the approval process moving forward is such that we do not impose anything on anyone, but that's something that we should undertake. And finally, maybe 2 quick elements. We had a workshop with the community of ISPs in the region, which was extremely well attended, and with two topics, AI and universal acceptance. AI, unsurprisingly, including with the DNS abuse elements. We discussed how those could be used mostly in our side of things to combat DNS abuse, and universal acceptance, and what we can do as ISPs to promote multilingualism on the internet and the use of non-ASCII alphabets. And finally, one which the Internet Coordination Policy number 2, which is the IP addressing policy for ICANN, which is getting towards the later stage. And it's also really important policy that is being developed by our colleagues from the addressing community. And we're looking forward to the final stage, which should happen by the end of this year, if my memory serves me. I hope I fit within the time limit. Frédéric, so over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philippe. Frédéric speaking. Yeah, you took even less time than what you have. And so the question to you it is no. So you stated many points and a very good summary of what has been discussed in ICANN85 in Mumbai. But what's coming now really on the top priority from GNSO?
I think that for the GNSO, the DNS abuse BDP is crucial, not only for the community, because it's, as I said, long awaited. We know that we have to do something, as the saying goes. It's long awaited by the board, by SSAC, as well as the GAG. We know that. The question is whether what we will come up with is fit for purpose, because we know, and I've referred to AI, if you've looked at the figures, it's outstanding. It gets to a point where the domain name registrations are very clever, and they're very dynamic, and they use APIs to do that. So I think it's going to be an important, even existential, I should say, whether the policy is fit for purpose to combat this sort of abuse. So that's the first thing. And I think ICP2 is also really important. Fingers crossed, the issue with Afrinic is getting better, and hopefully will stabilize within the next few months. Nonetheless, we need to have a more robust regional internet registry recognition process, and that policy is doing just that. So I think those are the two crucial, with the review of reviews, maybe the structural part, 2, 3 very important topics moving forward.
Frédéric speaking, very clear. Thank you, Philippe. And indeed, DNS abuse is a top topic, and for all constituencies, also, giving artificial intelligence and the evolution. And I think that our next speaker, Joanna Kulesza from ALAC and GAC, will address this point also. Joanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Frédéric. Indeed, this is Joanna Kulesza for transcription purposes. I'll kick us off with DNS abuse. Then I have the honor and the pleasure of liaising between the at-large community, the at-large advisory committee, and the governmental advisory committee. A relatively convenient position, since for a very long time the two constituencies have shared their perception on ICANN policy priorities. And this past meeting has been no different. We have held our regular bilateral, which reflected those points of convergence. One of those, indeed, is DNS abuse. A lot of conversation during the meeting, also a dedicated segment during our bilateral. What I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you the GAC communique, which was just published a short while back, to make these brief comments, to provide them with a little bit more background. The meeting was complemented by some organizational, structural changes. We will be losing one of the key support staff colleagues who has conducted this bilateral and relationship in this very kind and friendly manner, Rob Hogarth. This was the last meeting for him. So that was an important point also of our bilateral, with thanks and appreciation directed to our staff support teams, without whom this process would not be in itself possible. But with regards to policy, indeed, DNS abuse is very high up on the agenda. The Governmental Advisory Committee focuses its work streams around the Public Safety Working Group and the feedback from them, but also the mandatory, the standing component of capacity building focused on how DNS abuse is conducted. It focused on facilitating the newly created policy development process, still at a very early stage, but the feedback has been largely positive. As I believe Philippe also mentioned, one of the highlights and probably of interest to our end user community, as diverse as it is, also the deployment of AI, and there have been targeted policy-related initiatives to ensure that artificial intelligence would not mitigate our compliance mechanisms and our compliance cooperation. There is dedicated work within the Public Safety Working Group that targets the criminal use of domain generation algorithms. DGA seems to be the hottest acronym in town in terms of what we might wish to target to prevent algorithmic support for criminal activity with regards to the domain name system. The GAC has also expressly supported the GNSO policy development process that works on associated domain checks, implying that it might be worthwhile to expand the work that has been done by ICANN.org and the community thus far to ensure that this check of legibility of potential registrants is conducted as early on in the process as only possible. With the use of artificial intelligence, it has become increasingly easier for those bad actors to circumvent and to register and deregister domains, to speak in plain language, very quickly, in a sense, escaping the mechanisms we do have in place. DNS abuse is also reflected when it comes to the work that the GAC is planning to perform in Oman. There is a dedicated meeting, not in Seville, but in the next upcoming meeting. There is a dedicated meeting that will engage with local representatives and government representatives on the ground, which hopefully will be an opportunity to make the best use of our governmental advisory committee, engaging with lawmakers directly on the ground. The second highlight of the meeting and the second most important speaking point that is related to DNS abuse is the domain name registration data, the access thereto, and its accuracy. This has for a long time been on the radar of both communities. And once again, also in the report, as you will note, the Governmental Advisory Committee highlights the need to ensure that existing mechanisms behind urgent requests are legitimate, are prompt, but at the same time that they are limited to existing law enforcement cooperation, also with reference to existing international legal mechanisms. There is a reflection in the report of a relatively substantial discussion that deals with the privacy and proxy services, a challenge that the ICANN community has been facing for decades. One could say the AI component does not make that fight easier, but the dedicated attempts within the broader ICANN community, including the PPSAI, will likely help us target the privacy and proxy services accreditation issues. And the second component that I would like to highlight beyond DNS abuse is applicant support. We have seen this provoke quite a discussion during the bilateral itself. Both communities, the at-large and the governmental advisory committee representatives, support the policy that ICANN has implemented with regards to applicant supporting measures, whereas the high numbers, the effectively high numbers, 75 applications that have been qualified for the program are applauded, but the Governmental Advisory Committee highlights it's also worthwhile to focus on the quality of that support. We would want to make sure that the number does not impact the way in which the applicants are effectively supported. The applicant support program is subject to particular scrutiny for both communities. We want to make sure that the end users, as we like to view them, or the individuals, the citizens of states represented on the Governmental Advisory Committee, have fair chances, equal chances when it comes to benefiting from the new round of GTLDs. Both communities are committed to ensuring that we will keep a watchful eye on how the applicant support program is implemented on the ground. As always, the devil is in the details, so we will be pursuing the policies as they are implemented with regards to what that support will actually mean, both in numbers and in terms of process. Two more points I do have on my short list here. One of them is the review of reviews that Philippe kindly mentioned. Support for ameliorating the processes we have within the community, strong support for making sure we are more transparent, more effective, and more accountable, whereas at the same time, the question of priorities we have long raised still pertains. And then last but not least, very high on our agenda, but thankfully also reflected in the GAC discussions, is the WSIS plus 20 process and next steps. We embrace the fact that the multi-stakeholder model has been confirmed, that it has been supported by relevant UN processes. Just next week, another UN process is about to launch, one that is particularly close to my heart as it deals with the implementation of international law to cybersecurity challenges. For us, the next step will be to better understand how we can support the multi-stakeholder model in its day-to-day operations, a challenge that's particularly vital regarding the so quickly changing, developing international geopolitical situation. I will stop here. I'm always happy to follow up. I hope this has been useful. It seems as if those policy focus points are very closely combined across both of our communities. Thank you again for giving me the floor, and I very much look forward to the discussion. Thank you, Frédéric.
Frédéric speaking. Thank you very much, Joanna, for this highlight. Very well structured and with the key points also towards the future with cybersecurity laws, etc. I will give you now the floor and the link with cybersecurity law to Matthias Hudobnik from the SSAC, the Security and Stability Advisory Committee. So, Matthias.
Thanks, Frédéric. Matthias Hudobnik is speaking for the record. I have the pleasure to give you a bit of an overview about the full week of the Security and Stability Advisory Committee. So starting, we had the plenary, we had lightning talks, we had 3 dedicated DNSSEC workshops, and a lot of joint sessions. So with the ICANN board, NCSG, with ALAC, contracted party house, and also RSAC. Let me walk you through the highlights. So I would start with the tone was set from the start with the word resilience, I would say. So the week opened with our plenary, which was titled From Stability to Survivability and ICANN's role in the future of internet resilience. And that shift in language is deliverable and worth noting, I would say. And it also signals that the community is asking not just whether the DNS is stable today, but whether it can withstand also serious disruptions of tomorrow. And that framing ran through conversations all the week, I would say. The second thing brings me to the lightning talks. They're a bit more technical, obviously. There were one related to DELEC and RR type. So the ITF is developing a new DNS resource record type relevant to how the application is signaled and with implications for DNSSEC and still in development, but worth tracking. We had also some talks related to a bit flip measurement. There is also some fresh empirical data on error patterns in DNS response, foundational measurement work with direct relevance to DNSSEC, validation, and reliability. And then there was also some talk related to AI-driven cyber threats. So the question posed, how prepared are we really, and also reflecting generally community concerns about whether the DNS security posture is keeping pace with AI-accelerated threats. And then another point was related to testing resolver behaviors with broken authoritative servers, practical research on how resolvers behave under server failures, and also with direct implications for resilience and the favorable design. So these were a bit like more the technical pulse. And then on joint sessions, we had some SSAC NCSG session where this was centered. There was again some talk related to the open and public source, free open public source, SSAC 133 follow-up. Then there were some talks related to human rights impact assessment, DNS abuse, and also safer cyber collaboration. Then on this data was also the intercession with the fellows and the next-gen participants, which is always very important. Obviously, since I was a next-gen and a fellow, I always need to mention that. And here there was also, SSAC was explained a bit, then also at large, and then mingling and how people can be transferred into the community. Then we had the traditional SSAC ALAC session, which was also very good. We covered DNSSEC for end users, and then also some practical highlights, how to make DNSSEC validation meaningful and beyond the technical community. And there was a lot of interest and also a very fruitful exchange after their presentations, and also due to the EURALO roundtable we had before. Then on Sunday, we had also the DNS abuse and the work party where we reviewing the charter and also discussing there the outline of the work plan for the upcoming report. Then we had some SSAC and board session. Here the topics were again strategic resilience at ICANN. And then also a bit like obviously wipe checking on the review process. And then also, yeah, these were mainly the two. Okay, there was also a bit like discussion related to the strategic plan. And then also, as Philippe already mentioned, we had some very good session with the ISPCP, where we had presentations related to AI and DNS abuse, where I had the pleasure also to talk about it and give a bit of an overview related to data and the problems. And then with the joint session with the contracted party house was focusing on DNS abuse mitigation PDP, specifically associated with domain checks, and then also the DNSSEC operational consideration work party, where some information was shared. Yeah, and then finally, the last point, obviously DNSSEC workshop. There were 3 sessions. One was related to provisioning automation, so featured real implementation updates from bind to switch and postfix, and also showing different multi-signer and automation tooling moving from theory into live deployment. Another point was also post-quantum cryptography, so dedicated presentation mapped out the transition from DNSSEC and RPKI to post-quantum cryptography, and also how it will work over the next decade. And this is now firmly on the operational agenda. And then interesting also some Ghana's DNSSEC successful stories. So they showed or offered a concrete country-level example of what successful DNSSEC deployment looks like in practice. And then there were some additional sessions covered related to IETF DNS security updates and DNS in real-world attacks. Yeah, keeping the threat-facing dimension front and center. Yeah, and finally, yeah, as I would say, for me, ICANN85, the word was really survivability. So from DNSSEC automation to post-quantum planning to AI-driven threat discussions to the board conversations on strategic resilience. And also the community, I would say, is grappling seriously with what it takes to keep the DNS not just running, but trustworthy under real conditions. Thanks.
Frédéric, thank you, Matthias. It was really an amazing summary of all the work done, some technical, some more cross-community. I would have an additional question for you. What would be the priority now with the at-large committee, with the end-user community for the coming months? With all you have discussed, what should be really the priority from your point of view?
Good question. From my personal perspective, I would say, since there is already a really long discussion, or the discussion is quite long related to the CyberSafe campaign, I think it would make sense to push it a bit further from the at-large community. And then obviously, next thing, more the technical side, could be also that there's maybe some more discussion related to free and open source software.
Okay, free and open source software. And so it was what? Cyber resilience? It's that you mentioned?
No, there is the CyberSafe campaign.
CyberSafe campaign.
Yeah, exactly. It started already, and there are some dedicated videos related to explain end users how they can meaningful and also on an easy and comprehensive understanding browse through the internet on the different layers.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Matthias. And now we are going to our next speaker, Constanze Bürger from ASO. Constanze, are you there?
Yes, wonderful. I just brought you some slides. Just hello and thank you for your invitation, and thank you for the possibility to speak some words about our work at ICANN85. We focused in our work on the area governance document version 2 update, and this is including in the ICP2 review process. Just a few words about us, who we are. The address supporting organization was established by ICANN to advise on internet number resource policies and numbers. We coordinate the number resource organization, and we are a supporting body of ICANN. We are 15 members, 3 members coming from each regional internet registry region. And what is our task? We advise the ICANN board, we oversee global policy development processes, and appoint 2 members to the ICANN board and 1 member to the ICANN nominating committee. So the main issue of our work at ICANN85 had been the collaboration issues and the status presentation of our area governance document, and this includes the ICP2 review process. Just a question again, why we have to revisit ICP2. ICP2 is the Internet Coordination Policy. It was established in 2001, and after this, a lot of time has gone, and ICP2 is now nearly 25 years old. And the internet has changed over the last quarter century, and the relationships between areas and ICANN and other as well. So we need more explicitly provide for us, especially in ongoing responsibilities. We want to strengthen the internet ecosystem, and that's the precondition is to stabilize the areas. And so we have some problems and we have a lot of gaps, and we need the potential to recognize or de-recognize areas. And so we have to adapt the actual policy, the current policy, and to renew this. So we did a lot of work. And this will all community-based and in a collaborative manner. We offered a lot of documents. You can see this on the links. And if you're interested in more content, please have a look to the websites. We published the document, the gaps, the questions, the feedback, red threads, a lot of issues we got from this consultation process. Highlights of ICANN85. We had sessions all over the time in an internal manner. So we discussed on the next version of the document, but we also had sessions with the GAC, with the ALAC, with the SSAC, with the ICANN board, with the ICPCP, and we had 2 public sessions and a wrap-up. And we learned a lot. We got a lot of responses, and you can see the summary of the responses on the right side. I don't read this. You can see this also in the public presentation. We provide this on the ICANN site and the NIO.net website. But our key concerns we heard in the public consultation had about audit procedures, remediation, timelines, SLA criteria, role, transparency, public interest, multi-stakeholder governance, jurisdiction, feedback, adoption, and implementation of the document. And the main issue is to work on these and to bring in all these points, reviews, ideas in the final document and the draft document. Next slide. We want to provide on the next ICANN meeting. This is the upcoming timeline. So the final version of the document we want to deliver in Q3. And until now, we want to bring up the status report also at ARIN, LACNIC, and RIPE. The APNIC and ICANN85 community got already the status. And after that community engagement processes and the status presentation, we want to draft the final document. And the aim is to launch the document in the end of the year. So that's all. And also, if you have any questions, any feedback, please contact us and send us emails, reports. What do you want? We are quite open to do this. And if you have questions, please go ahead. Thank you for your attention.
Frédéric, thank you very much, Constance. It was really clear and good to put all those timelines in perspective. Also to remind that the ARR were created even before ICANN for some and some others after, and all the timelines here and what is coming. Good summary and clear focus on ICP2. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Valeriia Filinovych, ICANN fellow. It's really important to have new generation. We had Matthias notably to mention it. And how did you experience that? Yeah, are you there with us?
Thank you. So, hello everyone. My name is Valeriia Filinovych, for the record. I'm a legal scholar from Ukraine and I'm a university professor, and also I'm a director of Technology and Innovation Support Center at Kyiv Aviation University. ICANN85 was really valuable for me, not just as a mix or a set of sessions, but also as a practical understanding of how this system operates. Even though I'm not a newcomer, it was my third fellowship, but my last ICANN meeting was approximately 8 years ago, so I was a bit newcomer, let me say. During our sessions, we saw how discussions move from technical details to policy implications, and how these processes, although not fast, have long-term impact on how the internet is really governed. At the same time, it becomes clear that engaging in these processes is not straightforward. There is a certain level of complexity in terminology, in structure, in procedures, and especially in acronyms. And maybe for newcomers, it can create a real barrier, an obstacle. This is particularly relevant for individual experts, for researchers, because first of all, I am a researcher. From what I observed, there is strong potential for academic contribution, but there are still limited clear entry points for individual scholars who are not already part of established structures. Another point is the limited visibility of ICANN within academic environments. Many researchers working on digital governance, on internet regulation, on internet-related issues are simply not connected to these processes. In my view, this gap is important. ICANN could benefit from more structured engagement with academia, not only through general programs, but also through targeted opportunities for individual researchers. Of course, we know about UA program, but it's not for researchers, for individual researchers. But we are going to incorporate UA program in our university. Also, from the perspective of Ukraine, these discussions are not abstract. Issues of internet resilience, infrastructure governance, stability are directly relevant in the current context for my country. For me, this defines the next step of engagement. So to integrate ICANN-related topics into academic work, into our curriculums, I am going to involve students in internet governance discussions and contribute legal and research expertise where it is applicable. Overall, what stands out is that multi-stakeholder model here is not declarative. It functions in practice, and that creates real opportunities for those who are really ready to engage. This is my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valeriia, and good points about education, universities, etc. Maybe that would like to add something into that, because it's also your domain. Joanna?
I was actually just going to chime in the chat. Yes, absolutely. We do have Adam Peake on the call, and I don't want to take his opportunity to chime in on the academic engagement, but I was listening very carefully to what Valeriia was saying. I'm happy to take this conversation offline. We do have a network of schools of internet governance that have done tremendous work in addressing exactly the need that you have highlighted here. The Meissen School has been around for over 2 decades, and I feel like it's particularly addressing the niche, the gap that you have highlighted. The research program that has run for one term, but is coming back again, hopefully late this year, is another opportunity for us researchers to get more engaged. I do run a research center here in which that also happens to be an ALS. I appreciate Frédéric calling me out here. I'm more than happy to share experiences. I share the concerns, but I'm also happy always to welcome colleagues who are a little bit newer to this environment than myself to offer good practice examples. So thank you very much, Frédéric, for the opportunity. I'm happy to take this conversation with Valeriia offline. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valeriia and Joanna, and good to have also many women, I have to say, even a majority in this call. But we'll go now to Adam Peake from the GSE, so ICANN Global Support Engagement. You're really a good support for us all, and the floor is yours, Adam.
Thank you. Thanks, Frédéric. Thank you, everybody. Now, where to begin? I'm Adam Peake. I work for GSE. Apologies from Chris Mondini, our VP. He's traveling to Rust in Germany for an event. So I think he's on a train if the German trains are running, which takes me to the survivability note that Matthias mentioned. I was not in Mumbai, so I was accessing from The Hague, where I live, and survivability for me was the 4.5 hour time difference, which meant some very early mornings, and I do not normally do early mornings. It was a great meeting, and we have to thank Nixie, as Matthias mentioned, and also the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. I understand the hosts were superb, so thank you very much to them. The third ICANN meeting in India, I really wanted to be able to respond to your question, Frédéric, about the survey that was conducted after ICANN85. We've only just completed it, so the results are not available. So I'll just run through the general information. And there were 1,406 registered participants. That means badges issued. I think that's not including staff. 112 countries and territories, so a global representation. And I think people were anticipating more, but of course we had difficulties traveling because of the geopolitical situation. 660 virtual participants, which is quite normal from ICANN meetings. We usually are about 1/3 online compared to the full in person, and 38 fellows. Valeriia, thank you very much for being one of them, from 32 countries, and 11 next gen. I'll come on to the next meeting we're having, because it will be in the European region in Seville in June, when we'll have more next gen. Next gen participants come from the region where the meeting is taking place. So in Seville, they will be from the European region, or they will be in full-time education in the European region. I think many of the topics that were highlights for me, and I got up for or stayed, had my lunch over, were the stability and survivability, which I think people have mentioned is incredibly important in our changing technical environment. Everyone is concerned about AI, whether it's in the ICANN world or in our daily lives. WSIS Plus 20, lessons learned. ICANN, very pleased to see the multi-stakeholder model recognized, and also, of course, that the technical stakeholder group is recognized as a stakeholder. This does give us something of a more enhanced seat at the table, if that's the right phrase, but we're more in the room and we have to make use of that, and that's a discussion to have. Review of reviews, of course, accountability, transparency, essential, a bedrock of what ICANN does, particularly since the transition in 2016, transition from the oversight of the US government to us standing free as a global multi-stakeholder organization. Highlights things that we worked on: global stakeholder engagement. The regional vice presidents met with the EURALO leadership, and that was a good meeting. What we were trying to talk about there was how we're evolving our engagement strategy so that we're looking more at outcomes, measurable outcomes. Where has our outreach and engagement worked? What has the effect been? And you'll hear more of that. We will discuss it further in the months coming up to Seville and in Seville, and how we can work with you. And it was rewarding to have those discussions. And after the collective meeting between all the EURALO leadership and the VPs, we went on and broke into our regional groups and had discussions there. Couldn't not mention, no, I should talk a little bit about the UA Day events, universal acceptance, the priority in the strategic plan for inclusion. ICANN is a global organization. If we do not include people to be able to write in their own names, their own languages, the scripts, then that is not inclusion as anybody would think of it. UA Day, the Universal Acceptance Day events will begin from tomorrow, 25th of March to the 30th of May. You will hear about, there will hopefully be a session at the EuroDig meeting with UNESCO announcing an enhanced program and relationship with them on universal acceptance. Again, this is building off the relationships that are strengthened from the WSIS Plus 20. At least I believe all of this sort of helped together, right? It's a continuum of recognition, not only as a stakeholder group, but the importance of what we collectively do as ICANN and with our technical partners, the RIRs and so on. We're, we're creating a foundation on which applications and services work. So in the WSIS context, I suppose you could say we're providing a foundation of which information society and the digital economy is really working. So we cannot underestimate the work that you do as a community in making this happen. It is essential. So that is important. Of course, about the next gen, there's an excellent presentation by a young man called Rohan. His presentation, I think, is online as the first one of the part one of the next gen presentations. And he spoke about universal acceptance and just an extremely good 7-minute presentation about universal acceptance. And it's important about creating equal digital identities for everybody. So I do encourage you to look at that presentation. All the next gen presentations are online. And that leads us on to Seville, I think, a little bit. So the dates, which are the 8th to the 11th of June, it's a policy forum, which means we're none of the opening ceremonies and the things that happen at the other two main meetings. There will be a Europe Space meeting, which I hope will take place on Wednesday, the 10th of June, as the last session of the day. We will do our best to avoid conflicts with other sessions, but you can never be quite sure because there's many sessions to fit in. But I think, as we did in Prague, I'll try and make sure that focus is on legislative initiatives. There's a lot coming out of the Commission at the moment. There's a lot happening across the European region. So we'll look at that and we look forward to your input. I've been talking to Nati and to Amelia about how to bring in some content from the European region. Thank you, Nati. And looking forward to that. What else is happening there? So about the academic engagement program, when I'm not focusing on country engagement, I also have civil society as one of the groups that I engage with. Joe Catapano, my colleague, has taken over the academic side of this and has a new strategy that he's trying to launch. He's taking it very carefully because it's too large a stakeholder group, a group that we haven't engaged with as much as we want to. I think you know how to contact people. First, Adam Peake. So any ICANN staff member, first name dot family name at ICANN.org. And yeah, Valeriia, I'd love to hear from you and we can talk about it. I can definitely offer a 60 or 90-minute lecture of me going on and on about internet governance and how it works and where it came from and how the internet works, and all of these things that I said are the sort of foundation of what everybody else does in terms of content and services and applications. I'm afraid I can't get to Ukraine again, but I have lectured at the Taes University in Kyiv before. But we'll be back one day. And so please get in touch. And that's the same for everybody. It's very difficult to engage with universities absolutely all around the world. And it's very difficult to get into everybody's curriculum. But I can certainly offer lectures to you. And we can bring in people from the technical group, the Office of the CTO, OCTO, to talk about issues of resilience and so on and so forth. Last, so looking forward to seeing you all in Seville. There is a webinar tomorrow about behind the scenes of the LRoot operations, which has been sent to the EURALO list and should be interesting. How do the root server system work? And then last, can't finish without mentioning Amrita, the chair of EURALO, who was awarded the Community Excellence Award. And it's excellent that happened because Amrita is not only a lovely person, she's an exceedingly good chair and community member. So thank you, everybody. As I said, Valeriia, please get in touch. Thanks.
Frédéric, thank you very much, Adam. A lot of content, inspiration, good things. Please share also the links you mentioned for the next-gen presentations. That will be also inspiring for all of us. I have to say I have missed them myself, I admit. So please share with the community. We will work together for sure on the coming outreach engagement plans and all the activities you mentioned. And yeah, Amrita Chaudhary was really something, I have to say, the Community Excellence Award. I had the opportunity to have leadership program with her and to collaborate across EURALO. Really amazing, right? It's really good to meet people really internationally, to have one world, one internet with ICANN. That's really a good inspiration to meet all people during ICANN meetings. And also another kind of summary we'll have now from ALAC with Pari. She will talk us about really what went well during ICANN meeting, ICANN85, and what would have been missed during this meeting. Pari, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adam, for that comprehensive overview. The scale of ICANN85, I think, speaks for itself. Building on all of that, I would like to take a slightly different angle, not to go over what was discussed, but to step back and reflect on the broader picture, where ICANN is heading and what may be receiving less attention. So let me start with a context that's difficult to ignore. Around 90 million people in Iran are currently facing severe internet restrictions, including large-scale shutdowns. While this sits outside ICANN's direct mandate, it raises an important question. How do we remain connected to real-world user experiences when fragmentation of this scale is happening? Against this backdrop, one observation from ICANN85 is that these kind of discussions didn't feature prominently in many discussions. This invites a reflection. Is there a space to better acknowledge how global internet realities are evolving even when they fall outside ICANN's immediate remit? And this may also be an area for the community, especially those of us representing interest of end users, to reflect going forward. A second observation related to where ICANN as a community seems to be heading. Across sessions on DNS abuse, security, and visas plus 20, there is a clear sense that ICANN is operating in a much more interconnected governance environment. Technical issues are increasingly linked to broader policy debates, external processes, and emerging technologies. So there is a gradual shift here. ICANN is not just coordinating identifier, it's navigating a wider governance ecosystem. I would also briefly draw on two sessions I moderated at ICANN84 on ICANN's legitimacy. What came through strongly and still feels relevant now is that legitimacy is no longer only about process, but increasingly about perceived relevance and responsiveness, also shaped by geopolitical dynamics. So a third observation relates to institutional governance. There is a strong focus on improving accountability, refining processes, and strengthening effectiveness. And as you heard, several of the speakers tonight mentioned some of the sessions that took place in relation to improving this. But this also raises a broader question. Are these internal improvements keeping pace with how quickly the external environment is changing? Because that environment, shaped by geopolitics, digital sovereignty, and broader governance debates, is evolving very rapidly. Stepping back, 3 points stands out. One, possible gap between global internet realities and ICANN discussions. Two, a shift towards a more interconnected and complex governance environment. And third, a continued focus on institutional strengthening with room to align more closely with external changes. All of this sits with a broader geopolitical context, where internet governance is increasingly shaped by sovereignty, security, and the future of multi-stakeholder model in post-Visas Plus 20. And just one final point on why this matters, particularly from the European perspective. Europe is playing a leading role in shaping global digital governance through regulation, user rights, and debates on digital sovereignty. ICANN's ability to stay connected to broader governance developments becomes increasingly important. For EURALO, this creates a clear opportunity to act as a bridge, bringing European policy debates and regional expertise into ALAC and helping ensure that end-user perspectives from the region are reflected in ICANN's policy work. So in that sense, ICANN85 is not just a successful meeting, but also an opportunity to pause and reflect. Now, let me end this conversation by leaving you with a few questions to reflect on. And I had on a slide. I would be grateful if Michelle, you could display the slide. So as you can see on the screen, there are a few questions. I read them for you, and I really look forward for you to reflect. And if you want to come back to me, I love to hear from you. So first is, what is currently missing or insufficiently visible in ICANN discussions? The second is, looking ahead to ICANN 86, what should be prioritized most strategically? Is it internet disruption and user impact? Is it broader governance debates, AI, sovereignty, regulation, or institutional reform and accountability? Finally, what impacts European internet users most in these discussions? And I look forward to hear from you, and I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pari, for the. And just before going to the discussion, what is really the most positive that you have took from the ICANN 85 meeting in Mumbai?
Oh, I think that as I started my talk with, the scale speaks volumes. We had so many sessions, such a diverse opinions and topics, and also such a large number of participants, which we see in ICANN, and at least for me, this is multi-stakeholder in practice. I think that's the most positive and important aspect of the meetings that we have.
Thank you very much, Pari. And indeed, it was 203 meetings during the ICANN 85, so impossible to follow them all. Maybe some reaction from ICANN staff first. Adam, do you have something to answer to those questions or feedback?
Yeah, I think prioritizing strategically, we have the priority for the year is the new round. We will go into a sort of silence period as the round opens until the applications are received and announced. But that's really the biggest change that we'll see coming forward to the DNS, I think, in these coming months. Looking forward to both those coming through the applicant support program, but particularly in the world of internationalized domain names, which means making sure that we actually do get on with universal acceptance. The complexity of UA is incredible. It reflects the complexity of the internet itself, the tens of millions of applications and services that need to be made ready. And they are not, as we know. So there's priorities that are strategically within our mission. And I want to be a little bit careful because I know the answer to some of the more complex questions that Pari raised are often that ICANN has to be very careful about remaining within its bylaws and the limitations of what our mandate is. And so there are issues of internet disruptions and the impact on users that, while we all care about it, are not necessarily things that we can do anything about, and probably should not try to do anything about. But we are governed by what the community decides in many of these ways, unless it directly affects the DNS, when we will have comments upon that, I think, the technical operation of the DNS. For me, the priority is getting the new round out of the way and seeing what the results are and hoping that it leads us to a more inclusive internet. IDNs, my background, I have children who have Japanese names. I want them to be able to use those names with their digital identity. At the moment, they don't use them as easily as they do their English versions of those names. So that's an inequality with which we need to fix. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam, for those reminders and clarification. Do we have some hand raised in the audience?
I would like to respond if possible.
Yeah. Please go.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Adam, even in your conversation, certain topics was invisible or pushed back. And I think as a public benefits organization, ICANN has duty and must take a stand. And also, disruption and internet shutdowns of this scale impacts the stability of internet. So even if human rights is not important, I think in terms of the stability of internet, ICANN could take a stand. Having said that, I think it has to take a stand even on human rights and other aspects of internet. It's part of internet governance, and an organization with this scale, with this mandate, cannot stand quiet on those. Thank you. It's an issue of legitimacy, and we cannot ignore that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pari, for this. Some other comments from the audience? No? Okay. And there is no proposal to look towards the future in ICANN86 coming in Seville, and we have Natalia Filina who will exchange some words about this. Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Frédéric. Natalia Filina is speaking. And thank you so much for this discussion. It's something new for our readout, I think, and thanks a lot for all speakers. You put a lot of meaningful topics on the table today, and I may say the more difficult time we meet as internet end users, the more calm and more deep discussions we have inside of our community. So it's my observation, and I'm very happy with this. So I'm still a little bit new for this community. So 6 years, 7 years, it's nothing for ICANN. And I love to see this evolution of everything inside. On behalf of your Frédéric, EURALO chair, and myself, secretary of EURALO, and our board members and leadership, I may tell that since April, we will be engaged in very active work to build our agenda for the next ICANN meeting, because we will have it in Europe. And for us, it's always a very happy opportunity to meet, as Adam said, new community members, European community members, and we all the time caring about engaging much more experts from different stakeholders group, academia, researchers, so technical community, to our work. And so as a short announcement, I may say that we will work on the agenda inside of planning committee, and not only from EURALO, of course, from different EURALOs. So we will organize a general assembly for EURALO, and it's always open for everyone. And we will dream about, Adam, be a little bit close to this Europe space, just to combine our attendees for all of this discussion. We have a great plan, and I think we already on the track to be much more close to next gen and fellows, just because we would love to use this great opportunity to see in details at all of this project, which next gen usually presenting during or before, I don't know how it works, ICANN meetings. And I think so, as Adam again mentioned, part of this works and presentation might be discussed maybe with engaging experts from broader community. I think it will be very useful and very healthy way to engage, not only to organize our common session. Of course, we will do this in civil. See you in June. And thanks a lot for this discussion. And at the end of March, we will organize a roundtable. I'll keep you posted. The topic will be next round of GTLD in perspective of end users. So please join us. And thanks a lot for working together. It's a big pleasure to be part of this nice, friendly, warm community.
Thank you very much, Natalia. And I have to say that I'm already excited for the roundtable of next week about the new round of GTLD, but also to have the inputs of everyone in the meeting today. So I have planned with ICANN staff 2 questions to you. The first question is to know what really is the most important takeaway from the ICANN85. And the second question is for you, what should be our top priority for from now and from the next ICANN meeting in Sevilla? So if you can take a few minutes to answer this, I can just in the meantime remind some topics discussed today. We had the DNS abuse with different angles on DNS and also linked to artificial intelligence, identity privacy. We talk about the new round of GTLD, the new program, also the functioning for the applicants support program. We missed, I think it was discussed during ICANN85, the latent diacritics PDP for the .Quebec and Quebec with or without accents considered as 2. So that's still in progress and we'll have an update on this in Sevilla. We talk also about the review of reviews. We have talked about the ICP2, about outreach and engagement. And I have to say that we had an excellent session with Amrita, who won also the Community Excellence Award about the how to share the best practice between the different halos. It is something we will further work on. Different topics on security and privacy into DRS, DNSSEC, and many others, also human rights, and the internet governance, also with WCISP plus 20 others. That just to highlight some topics that were discussed today, but if you have some others, please put. All your input is good, and really it guides us for the priority for the what is coming next. This is really how we see that at EURALO to really hear the voice of the community. Thank you. I don't know how many answers we have. I see. I will not participate myself. I'm more the exception, the listener, I would say. I don't know, staff, how many answers do we have already? Just so you can put the keywords. It's sufficient. I see that also we have another fellow, Peter Barnabas. If you want to say some words, as the others are typing, the floor can be yours also, Peter. I see your hand raised. Sébastien Bachelet. Yes, Sébastien, the floor is yours, as the others are filling the survey. Sébastien?
Hello. Bonjour.
Merci
de me donner la parole. Je suis en train de conduire, donc c'est un peu compliqué de vous parler, mais merci pour toutes ces informations et tous ces échanges. Je voudrais en particulier souligner ce qu'a dit Pari. Je pense qu'on ne peut pas faire une réunion de l'ICANN dans la situation géopolitique dans laquelle nous sommes, qui a fait qu'un certain nombre de participants n'ont pas pu venir à la réunion parce qu'ils étaient inquiets ou parce qu'ils n'ont pas pu voyager. On ne peut pas faire l'abstraction de ça et donc les conséquences que ça a sur notre travail aussi. Et une des questions qui a été posée à la fois à la réunion avec les responsables de l'ICANN, du staff et au board, c'était quid de la réunion, la 3e réunion de l'année. Et pour l'instant, elle va avoir lieu dans cette zone de guerre sans que ça pose vraiment de questions. Je suis personnellement un peu surpris que nous n'ayons pas, que l'ICANN n'ait pas déjà décidé de déplacer cette réunion ou de l'organiser autrement, parce que même si les choses s'arrangeaient, ce qui malheureusement ne semble pas être totalement le cas, ce serait un peu dommage d'aller au milieu des possibles bombes qui malheureusement tombent sur ces différents pays. Et l'autre sujet qui me semble très important, parce que c'est lié avec chacun des sujets, c'est comment est-ce qu'on peut être sûr que l'ICANN continue de remplir son office et qu'elle est organisée pour pouvoir le faire. Et pour ça, la revue des reviews, même si je pense historiquement qu'un gros travail a déjà été fait par la revue de Accountability and Transparency, est un élément important qu'il va falloir suivre en détail. Je ne suis pas certain que ce qui est en train de se passer répondra aux besoins des utilisateurs finaux que nous sommes. Et je vais m'arrêter là parce que sinon je vais prendre trop de temps. Mais encore une fois, merci beaucoup pour tous ces échanges aujourd'hui. Merci Frédéric, merci Nathalie, et j'espère à Séville.
Frédéric au micro, je m'exprime en français, comme tu t'exprimes aussi en français, et je vais tâcher d'apprendre quelques mots d'espagnol pour Séville. Voilà, merci pour ce retour, et en effet, c'est une grande question, Oman, est-ce que ça va rester pour la fin d'année, et l'importance aussi des reviews of reviews. Merci Sébastien. And maybe coming back now, Frédéric still speaking about the results of the short poll we have now. Michelle, do we have some answers, more answers, please?
We do. We have about 25% participation.
Okay, good. So if you can show on screen, I don't know if everyone will see on screen the answers.
Oh, actually, it's because it's an actual question. It's not a multiple choice. So I do the results, which I will send to you, but one moment. Actually, one moment here.
Yeah, it's a kind of innovation in this meeting to have the Zoom poll functionality, especially with the ability to put some words. I see a hand raised by Barnabas Peter. In the meantime, so Barnabas?
Hello, my name is Barnabas Peter, and I was a first-time ICANN fellow in Mumbai. I had a good experience in Mumbai as a first-time fellow, and it was really a enriching experience. I found it quite insightful into how global stakeholders collaborate to ensure stability and security of the internet. And particularly, I was interested in the discussions around DNS security and the emerging role of AI in detecting, addressing the DNS abuse. This was a topic mainly done by SSAC, and yeah, it was truly inspiring. I am currently staying in Poland, and this is where I work and study. Thank you.
Thank you, Barnabas, and please also participate from EURALO. You may, as an individual member from EURALO, I think that your work on DNS abuse, artificial intelligence will be also helpful for the community. Back to Michelle then. Do we have some answers, Michelle?
We do. Absolutely. Okay. So the first question for you, we have 8 out of 9 answered. For you, what is the most important you take away from ICANN85? The time is running out very fast for applicant to apply starting the 30th of April. ICANN is not ready for the next round. The timeline is very tight. ICANN needs to extend the application window to the 31st of December. We also have another response. ICANN is entering a legitimacy stress test, not technical, but governance one. ROR, particularly holistic and structural review. Remote access works well. As someone who didn't travel to Mumbai, I appreciated the recordings being made available quickly. The next round is upon us, but there are still a lot of problems at ICANN that need attention. And let's see, we have a few more responses. DNS abuse is finally in flight. It takes some effort to get people in AL active on issues. And the last response, remote participation is hard for an uncomfortable time zone. And then the second question for you, what should be our top priority now and until ICANN 86 in Seville? We have a response. The next round, helping applicants prepare and much more outreach around the world. Clarifying strategic relevance in a changing world. UA Day activities. Monitoring the new GTLD process, making sure that community applicants are supported and that this round is not benefiting only the speculators. Are the Europeans asking for new TLDs? What do we know about that? If so, better or worse than expected? Prepare an outreach event to the ISP community in Europe. And 2 more responses. What do you want out of reviews? Are they worth the time? If so, why? And include the youth, give them a voice. And those are all the responses to both questions.
Namaste. That's really excellent. Thank you, Michelle, for this feedback and for the whole community who answered. So for the next round of new GTLD, you will have the answer already next week, so 31 of March, same time, basically. And for the other rounds, I would propose to take all the input we have received now and to address this in upcoming EURALO monthly member meeting as follow-up and also preparation for the ICANN meeting in Sevilla. And we are reaching to the end of this meeting. So we have planned 1 hour, and with discussion is 1 hour and a half. So it's good timing. Better done this time. I would like to thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. It was really good to have all your ID input here. I have to say that my main takeaway from Mumbai is to have met all wonderful people there, and I missed some. So I really like to see more people, and during next events, it can be Eurodig, it can be other events where ICANN is present, or in Sevilla, or even online. Don't hesitate also to reach out to me for a private conversation if you would like, if you have any idea. And thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your attendance. Goodbye.
Thank you, Frédéric, and thank you everyone for joining today's session. Meeting is adjourned.